Libraries UK on large-scale strategic digital projects. And Ines Byrne is the National Library of Scotland's Digital Transition Manager. Ines has been leading the library's strategic development of digitised collections and overseeing the NLS's Digital Scholarship Service. Ines has worked in digital collections for over 15 years, and she's been instrumental in expanding the National Library's digitisation infrastructure under the multi-instrumental 1/3 digital programme. She's established the Digital Scholarship Service in 2018, and in her talk, Ines will showcase the NLS's collections in dataset format, which has enabled new ways of research, interrogation, and creative reuse. Ines will discuss the value and potential of this new collection format, sharing some takeaways from the NLS's first 5 years of serving collections and data. So may I introduce Ines Byrne.
Thank you very much, Katina. Good morning. I mentioned to Peter earlier when we arrived that I haven't spoken to a live audience for almost like a decade, it feels. So thanks for being a very, very kind crowd today. So yes, my name is Ines Byrne, and I'll just get started telling you a little bit about a very short, brief moment on our digitisation programme and then on our digital collections in dataset format. So at the National Library, we've been digitising our materials for several decades. This has been a strong component of our work for a while, and we've digitised to date roughly, I think, around 650,000 things. We certainly do tens of thousands of material items every year for the last little decade or so. How many you've got in digital format really depends on what you count and how you count it, I guess. The core driver for our digitisation programme is to make these materials freely accessible worldwide through our website. And there, people are able to access the collections as digital images, where possible with transcriptions in form of OCR, for example, well, most likely in form of OCR. And that more or less replicates the material's physical readability just in digital format. So that's pretty much what you get. Until 2019, that was the only way our digital collections could be consulted. And that's still one of the ways they can be consulted. Then in 2019, we launched our Digital Scholarship Service. And one of the service's core ambitions was to deliver our digital collections in dataset format, and making these materials machine readable and therefore interrogable in new ways, really put them out to the public in very, very new forms and at a different scale. Our digital scholarship librarian, Dr. Sarah Ames, kind of arrived at a good point in time back in 2019. And these were the things she faced when she arrived with us. So we have around, I say, 650,000, do not put a FOISA request in for this number, please, materials in digital format. These are books, manuscripts, maps, as of late, newspapers, photographs, ephemeral work, but also moving image and sound. We do have an ongoing digitisation programme, so that's also a strong point that Sarah benefits from for her work in turning collections into datasets. We have a robust rights assessment framework and or process around that framework, and that's something to maybe just bear the back of your minds for a little while as I progress with this presentation, because that's helpful. And we have a DAMS. I don't know how many of you do or don't have DAMS, but it comes in very handy when you try to create and store your datasets. So when Sarah arrived, based on her guidance, our dataset creation workflow basically included 3 core principles. And they are that our datasets would be open, transparent, especially around provenance, and as easy to use as possible. So that was the kind of mantra, that was the prerequisites we wanted to give ourselves. Sounds very straightforward, can be a challenge. The Data Foundry, which is the platform on which we serve our datasets on our website, went live about half a year after Sarah arrived, so fairly quickly for National Library standards. And it went live with just 4 datasets, all created from our digitised collections. Within 4 months of that, we were able to present the first 2 external projects that were created or worked around that featured these datasets. And in addition, Sarah had started to liaise with academics to embed our datasets in their coursework and also to start running collaborative PhDs with them. We released new datasets regularly. When you start a new service, you get quite excited about it, and at the start we released a new dataset several times a year. I want to say almost every month, but maybe it wasn't quite as regular as that. And the interactions with them increased month by month, so we could see that uptake really, I could have put a curve on the screen right now. So that really allowed us to experience that our collections are now being used for research in ways that it just wasn't possible before, and we hadn't witnessed before. I want to just take a moment and tell you the story of one of those datasets, just zooming in a little bit. In 2018, we digitized the first 10 editions of the Encyclopedia Britannica. That was primarily as a gap filler in our digitisation program. Sometimes that happens. You digitize collections, you have a bunch of people, you have a bunch of equipment, and one of these strands might run dry. You can see in 2 months' time we have a little dip. So we asked curators, would anyone have a small collection just to feed us for a few months? And one of our curators came forward and said, well, the first 10 editions, there's around 250 volumes, you could do them. And so we did. And it was a quick win for everyone involved. These volumes are very much in good condition physically. They all had the same size. They all opened equally well, so we could just digitize them very quickly. And we did that, and we put them on our website. And we thought that was our job done, because that's what we always do about our digitized collections. We digitize them, process them, and put them on our website. But when Sarah started in 2019, this was one of the first collections she looked at, and she was keen to turn that into a dataset. And so we did. And since then, we've had university students create visualizations from these materials. We even had one group of students map the Britannica subjects on a Minecraft world. You can see that there, chemistry, anatomy, and so on. You can actually play through that. We've had a collaborative PhD, she's still working on it at the moment, researching the evolution of slavery in the Britannica. And our 2023 Digital Scholarship Fellow, a man called Dr. Jan Ryan from the University of Leiden in the Netherlands, he analysed patterns of text reuse across the different editions. Also, we had Professor Melissa Terras and Dr. Rosa Figueira, and they developed text mining approaches to extract articles from the corpus, and that enabled new forms of research. And Rosa also trained in AI toolbox on the corpus called Francis. If you were interested in that, you can find more about Francis somewhere on the web. None of this was planned when we digitized them back in 2018. We just wanted to put them on our website. But these research questions, they are much more diverse than anything we could have thought of back in 2018, even in early 2019. So my message for this slide is the digitization of a collection and then turning it into a data set, regardless of how large or small that data set is, really always is an opportunity. You can't go wrong with it. It opens doors, it enables growth in personal skills, in research methodologies, in the study of our world and our society, in creative outputs. So never underestimate the power of a data set. I also wanted to spend just a few minutes just saying size doesn't matter. So that's maybe another takeaways for today. I've listed here, so currently our Data Foundry hosts, I should have looked it up actually, like a few dozens of data sets. The largest is 700 individual pages, and each page is represented by an alto file. That they make up over 387 million words, and gigabyte, it's 130 if you leave them uncompressed. We actually had to serve that data set in 4 parts just to make it even not crash anyone's computer. Our smallest data set on the same Data Foundry is just 163 pages. It's actually a diary manuscript by a young girl called Marjorie Fleming. It's only 12,000 words. It's 19 MB, easier to download. So size doesn't matter. Amongst the medium-sized datasets that we have are, for example, a collection of chapbooks, and they have seen a multitude of reuses across academic courses and academic research projects, including they've actually been sonified by an AI algorithm by a researcher in the US. So you can actually hear, I didn't play it today, but you can hear these chapbooks in music, and each theme in these chapbooks makes up a different instrument. So imagine an orchestral work, and you hear different instruments, and the person doing the analysis, he analysed the themes occurring in the text in the chapbooks and then turned these themes into music. And one of the most prominent instruments you hear in that piece of music is actually the OCR errors that the software picked up. So you're sonifying not just your data, but also the data that is incorrect or the lack of data. Very, very interesting experimental work. Again, something we didn't force, we didn't trigger. It just happens once your data is available. And our smaller data sets too are very handy, especially for first, second year students when they are, for example, in visualization courses at academic institutions. So the size is not the core driver of success at all when it comes to data sets. I also want to take a moment to show what our data sets look like and how we create them. So each one, and I've just picked, these are all stills. I didn't trust the live connections too well. This is the landing page for the Britannica collection on our data foundry, and each data set starts with this kind of overview banner. So at a glance, you get an impression of what the data sets will throw at you. So this one here says, in terms of OCR, it's the original OCR as it came out of some digitization process. It hasn't been tidied up. So that at a glance, you can get a feel for how accurate that might be. It tells you how many alto files they have. So alto files, alto is a form of XML file that offers world level coordinates, and we create one per page. And it tells you how many image files there are, that there is a METS file explaining the wider context of the item. It tells you how many lines and words the dataset contains, and roughly how many years it covers, or if we know precisely, then precisely what publication dates are covered by that dataset. Next, if you scroll down on that page, you would see some rights information. And I mentioned earlier we have this rights assessment framework comes in very handy, because at the moment our core ambition is that we only publish data sets that are in the public domain or of no known copyright. So we have to have clear attributes, and we want to be very precise about them on our data foundry. And if you scroll down a little bit more, you have 3 options for downloading. So you can start with a trial just to kind of dive in and see what the data looks like. You get the whole package deal if you want to, or you have an option to just download the text. If you're not interested in the images, your data set becomes much smaller. So that's maybe attractive to those who just want to do text mining. And at the bottom of each page, there's a way to cite the data set, and that's also where we would put up information on versioning, for example. All of this actually follows a similar pattern to data sheets. So I don't know if any of you are aware of that. If that's maybe a term you might want to Google if you haven't heard of this before. Data sheets are introductory explanations of a data set. This here, what we do is much simpler, much more at a glance and scaled down as a first introductory bit of information. Looking inside each data set, I just thought maybe if you haven't, because it can be quite a daunting thing to have in your head, just to say that's what happens when you open one of these trial folders. You get the alto files, you get the images, you get one METS file per item, per collection, and you get a README that kind of explains in human readable format what we are talking about, what this is all about. If you were to go into the folder with the alto files, there you go, just XML. It's not scary, and it just will run and on. You have, I don't remember how many we have for the Britannica, but you might have tens of thousands in there or more. And then each of these alto XML files just looks like this, and it's basically just XML with word level coordinates. That's what these are. So that's really it. That's what data sets look like at the National Library of Scotland. How do we create them? Well, we start by a process that is already in place, which is our digitisation and file creation process. And starting on the top left, we start with selection for digitisation. We work on rights and metadata and conservation work around the physical items. We go through the digitisation process itself. From there, as part of our file creation process, I'm sorry, that's a little bit low down, we generate our derivative files, so JPEGs, OCR, we generate IIIF manifests, and PDFs. None of this is thinking of dataset yet. That's what we always do for putting collections on our website. The files go into our DAMs, remember, so our repository, so that's why it's handy to have a DAMs, and that includes copyright information. And the reason why it's handy to have DAMs is because Sarah can then come and pick things up from there. Got a little kind of not blue or green box, that's yellow, it's a bit shrieky. It says retro create alter files, and the reason why I made that yellow is because that was something we hadn't done before Sarah arrived. So when you just want to put your collections online, you don't need alter files. I said earlier, we have digitized tens of thousands of items every year over many years, and none of them had alter files. So that was a little bit of a stumbling block when we started our digital scholarship service, and that is something we had to painfully do. In retroconvert, it is it's a stumbling block, but you have to overcome it. Otherwise, your datasets are not as intuitive for their readers or for the people that want to work with them as they are with altos. So that's something we had to change our workflow to make that happen. Then we compile the METS file, we extract all of these file formats and compile the dataset. And we zip it up, we put it up into some bespoke storage, we create DOIs, and that was also something we hadn't done with our digitized collections. Our digital files have unique persistent identifiers, but our data sets actually didn't have DOIs, so signing up to, in our case, DataSite took us a little while, but again was something worthwhile doing. And there they go, they're published online. That's roughly, in a nutshell, how we go about creating datasets. Again, just saying this to kind of demystify the thought of we'll never get there. This is going to be far too complicated. We don't have the IT infrastructure and so on. It can be. Of course, there's lots of hands in the background that have to make this all happen, but overall, the workflow is not insurmountable. So, in terms of stumbling blocks, I just wanted to say alter file creation. Compiling a METS file, I skipped over that a little bit, but if you have decades of working where different parts of information about a digital collection sit in different parts of your organizational IT structure, putting that together into one METS file from different systems can be quite cumbersome. So again, it's just something we have to weave into our workflows now, and we're getting better at knowing in advance that that's what we need to do and where that data sits and how it comes together into one METS. It's tricky, but important to do. So in addition to those technical challenges, I'm going to just spend a minute and say that we also are navigating through some less tangible ones, and especially around the selection process for our digitization program and how that is driven by dataset creation. So far, until last year, our digitization program was driven by factors like what would audiences need, what would curators need, and so on. And our data sets were always created from existing digitized collections. There's a few on the wall. We have some newspapers in dataset format, we have novels, we have school exam papers, gazetteers, all of these lovely things are collections we happen to have in digital format. This year, 2024, is the first year where we are actively digitizing a collection because of its potential as a data set. And that is a mind shift. That hasn't happened before. And I don't know how it works in your organizations, but in the National Library, whenever such a mind shift comes, we are extremely delighted, and then we implement it and we run it for just a short period, and then you go like, why haven't we always done it like that? Like, it doesn't sound grand anymore as soon as it's ready to roll, because it's so obvious and it's such a useful change. So that's what I expect from this as well. At the moment, we're still excited about being able to say we're digitizing, not because we want to put it on our website, well, we will do that anyway, but that will not be the only end game. The collection in question is around 5,000 books of mountaineering materials, and digitizing them to display them on the website, as we do with all of our digitized collections, basically, again, helps replicate the physical readability in digital format. You have still images, you have OCR, and you can consult them worldwide, free of charge, and so on. But releasing them as a data set will actually turn them into a resource that will enable climate research. And that is something that is the new thing around us, where we start to think of our collections as, what can they tell you just as still images in OCR? The ability to analyze these materials for information regarding climate only becomes manageable in machine-readable format, because it's a subtle underlying subject. It's not how they were tagged in the catalogue. This approach, so the opportunity to think of your collections beyond the subject heading they've been given at acquisition stage, is that's a game changer, certainly for us. And it's a game changer in how we select materials for digitization. We will not just think putting a collection online and making it digitally accessible. It goes beyond that. And at the same time, we're letting go of the certainty, which is that we know why our audiences will consult a collection, because putting it online as a mountaineering collection, we know people will consult it as a mountaineering collection. That is true for our, what we call the digital gallery on the website. That's not going to be true necessarily if they consult it as a data set. So letting go of knowing why audiences find your collections of importance. And that's a big strategic thing, a mind shift, because organizations always want to know. You have KPIs, you want to plan ahead, you want to be able to measure your impact, you want to be able to predict your audience behavior. You can't as data sets, and I hopefully my Britannica example earlier was helpful in demonstrating that. So providing access to your collections as data sets can genuinely take them to the next level, be it to support academic research or creative outputs, or just to trigger critical thinking. We don't know. But that's okay. So, what matters then in creating a data set? I'm going to start by quickly saying what doesn't matter. Size doesn't matter. Remember, our smallest data set was not even a book of, it was one diary, not even 200 pages. It doesn't matter. Quantity doesn't matter. We started with 4 data sets, and the uptake came. Including because CILIPS was really, really good at liaising with potential users, liaising with academics and getting the conversation going. A significant part of her work is to stay engaged with the digital scholarship community or digital humanities community. Content kind of doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that it's a chapbook or a school exam. We actually have created data sets we have turned our ALMA catalogue, so our entire, I think it's 5 million records of published collection items that are in our printed catalogue. We've turned them into a data set, and they've had uptake, including by students who have visualized the lack of languages in that data set. Or you can start to visualize male versus female authorship and that kind of thing. And of course, you have to be very critical because there's a lot of lack in your data, but you can start to visualize the lack in your data. You can start to visualize our catalog records are not good enough, and here's the evidence. There's a void there. So don't shy away from thinking, don't be shy and don't think you don't have data. We also have created data sets from our corporate archive, one of them being our financial expenditure, but also one being our estates metadata, not metadata, our estates data on our travel and our energy uses. And again, we have visualizations now on, surprise, surprise, our travel went down during 2020 and 2021. But the data shows that. And actually turning these kind of data into data sets has taught us how to create our data better, so you can turn it into a better data set. Our estates team, for example, had several columns in their spreadsheets where sometimes the value was 0 and sometimes the value was blank, or the cells were blank. And it wasn't clear whether 0 meant 0 or just blank. So turning it into a data set and getting feedback from students really helped us to understand if we are more accurate in how we record our estates metadata. Someone can come in and help us visualize stories from there that we can't without that data being correct. So content doesn't matter. What matters is consistency. Be as consistent as you can. This is why I said our data sets always start with these 5 or 6 graphs on the top saying what's your OCR quality like, how many pages does it include, how many files are we talking about, what time coverage, consistent in the disclosure of rights situations, consistent in having a DOI, and so on and so on. And being transparent, be as open about background information, the METS file, explain why you have digitized that collection, explain who's funded it, explain any trigger points. We have digitized a collection of colonial materials, medical papers from India, or covering medical papers from British India, and we got the collections OCR'd in India, 20 years ago. So when Zira comes and turns us into a data set, she's like, we need to disclose that. That is because they were digitized much earlier, and decades later you get cheap labor from the country that you're trying to, be open about your colonial history with that country. So that's transparency is always very, very important. And what is also important is getting started. If you have a digital collection or any corporate data or a catalogue record, if you have any of that, you've got data. So you're already halfway there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ines, and I'm going to pass you over to Peter.
Hi. My name's Peter Findlay. It says up there. I run a long job title, which I find very annoying to say, and I particularly find it annoying that it says that I'm an expert anyway. But there you go. So JISC, I don't know, who knows what JISC is? Yeah? A few hands, definitely a few hands, that's good. But what are we then? I'll say. Okay, so we're the UK Digital Data and Technology Agency, and we're focused on tertiary, I can never say it very well, tertiary education, research and innovation. I've done a lot of research really into research and the uses of technologies such as AI and large language models over the last few years. And I'm kind of focused on innovative uses of technology and what's kind of coming and what's going and what might be important for librarians and archivists, I suppose, essentially. So over to what I was going to talk about. So Lorcan Dempsey suggested, does everybody know who Lorcan Dempsey is? Previously of OCLC. He writes a very popular blog for librarians and has done for a number of years. And again, Lorcan's very much focused, and used to work for JISC. He's very much focused on innovation and what's coming and what's going in libraries, particularly for focus on technology. He suggested that librarians have a stereotypical view of large language models. And he said, this suggests in turn how much work we have to do to change the perception of the library in the public record that feeds the LLMs. So yes, LLMs hallucinate, but they are here to stay. Professor Tom Dietrich of Oregon State University says LLMs are not knowledge bases. Instead, they are probabilistic models of knowledge bases. This is an important point. Dietrich suggests that LLMs have issues with epistemic knowledge, e.g. knowing that there is a new CEO of CILIP, or making up their name. Also, aleatoric uncertainty when the LLM cannot deal with the unpredictable things that humans can, e.g. understanding a person's position in a room. LLMs undertake automatic synthesis of information, and that's what creates hallucinations, because LLMs complete what they don't know from the general amalgam of data through prognosis of the next most likely word or phrase. The question is, what can we do about it? For HEIs and their libraries, the best way to address this issue, I think, is for the universities to get involved deeply in both experimenting with these technologies by bringing their data, special collections and so forth, into the environment with lots of controls in place. As Ines has demonstrated, those controls are information about what this material is. So a prime example is the Data Foundry, which has implemented these principles and the principles of the collections of data movement, an international US-led initiative to make more library collections available for computational research methods. The recent Vancouver Statement on Collections as Data states clearly what is needed. Principle 11 states, collections as data students should design access with appropriate consideration of data consumption by artificial intelligence and other technologies. So building better AI is about data, data, data. If institutions are to continue to be instrumental in a world where computational methods of research increase exponentially, they need to invest. Currently, institutions cannot afford to develop their own LLMs for research, but this would be the solution to the problem. This would require funders and institutions to join forces to build jointly held LLMs and related distributed data management infrastructure, thus creating a fit-for-purpose data environment for arts and humanities and social science data. We know this is not likely in the current climate, even if the government rhetoric suggests that they take AI seriously. The Dutch government has funded the KB to develop its own LLM. In the meantime, we can start small. Then, again, size doesn't matter. HEIs and their libraries need to get on the front foot and start to engage directly with those who build large language models. And they need to harness and utilize technologies such as small language models, retrieval augmented generation, or RAG, and retrieval augmented fine-tuning. RAG is the process of retrieving relevant contextual information from a data source and passing the information into a large language model alongside the user's prompts. This information is then used to improve the model's output, generated text or images, by augmenting the model's base knowledge, connecting to a knowledge base, in fact. To achieve this, libraries could work with commercial LLM companies, as colleagues at the OU's Knowledge Media Institute have started to do already. Their core GPT provides an example of what might be achieved if HEIs start to utilize technologies such as RAG, and by deploying their own individual training data sets, they could develop some of these from already digitized sources through digitization. Because RAG allows specialist training data to directly interact with the LLM, and various control measures can be put in place to impact the final outputs. To make this happen, HEIs need to make their historical data sets available for easy consumption by both researchers and the machines they are using to further their inquiries. They need to work with those researchers to deploy effective knowledge bases via RAG, to digitize materials and to provide them in a variety of formats. Core GPT utilizes RAG to connect a knowledge base of 30 million plus scientific articles. The project first confirmed that ChatGPT, and GPT-4 in particular, provides unreliable data outputs. So they developed a question set which was delivered through RAG along with article extracts. This produced verifiable references to 400 relevant articles in answer to the supplied 100 questions. But Tom Dreitzig has rightly suggested caution, as the problems of LLMs can contaminate the data utilised via RAG. However, Core GTP has found ways around this through lots of experimentation. Going back to Lorcan's point, commercial companies need better data. Google blames its current summary section hallucinations on large language models not being trained on good data. This is an opportunity for universities and their libraries to gain a foothold and to influence companies by providing better data and being involved in the environment and its development. HEI libraries can focus on improving utilisation of language technologies, not simply regulate their use in teaching, learning and assessment. How can humanities and social science research develop in an age of computation? For the last 30 or more years, digital humanities has shown the way, I think. A recent shining example of this are the impacts of AI and our humanities research from the Living with Machines project at the Alan Turing Institute in the British Library. This has been a 5-year AHRC-funded programme to explore, among other things, the critical use of AI on collection research. One professor of history working on the project has changed his lifelong historical research practices because of encountering large data aggregations in the Living with Machines project. His work was especially changed by the ability to visualise map data and population data through which has been extracted and developed through machine learning. British Library Labs has also been undertaking experimentation over a number of years, way before OpenAI started to dominate the AI narrative. Note that Google has been providing us all with AI-assisted search through BERT since 2019, but of course they do have current issues with their summary windows. So what kind of solutions might we think about? I think investment is important. The investment HEIs need to make includes funding digitisation of materials sitting on shelves from core budgets or prevailing upon funders to fund that work. It has been said that if it's not digital, it will cease to be relevant. But I don't think that's actually the case, because we still have a lot of hard copy. And that's being produced and consumed as we speak. However, AI's prevalence will ratchet up still further digital access issues and change the consumption of knowledge. Libraries will be more challenged by the need of new generations of digitally focused researchers to have access outside the hallowed reading rooms. This has already happened with the emergence of e-books, with some librarians becoming procurement managers of e-books for students. But what about support for humanities research? Some big HEIs have done a lot already to offer direct librarian support to digital research initiatives, but we think we need more, and we need to think about how libraries and archives can support the work of those who might increasingly want to undertake research with computational methods. My investigations have shown that they are not so well prepared. Classically, they will depend on commercial library system providers and entities like OCLC and Library of Congress and Ex-Libris and others are doing tests with AI-assisted catalogue, and it's clear that the gains can be made. But HEIs need to own these technologies, not just rely on commercial forces as they have done with digitised archives from publishers, which has led to fragmentation, lock-up of out-of-copyright materials, high access fees, and frustration for many researchers who cannot access what they need to further their research. You can see more about this in the report Collaborative Historical Research in the Age of Big Data, which came out of the Living with Machines project. Very interesting read. I think it's likely we'll see more researchers who want to use computational methods, even where they may not be central to their work. It may just form part of their research. So what do we need? No. Good quality data informed by academic processes will be a prerequisite. People need meaningful information about the provenance and background, including previous uses of the data, through technologies such as data sheets for datasets, which goes beyond usual metadata, so it's actually a record that travels with that data. And I think that's what's critical about that data sheet idea. Researchers will always need to work on their data and to make it their own in a sense before being able to run an AI process. So we need to provide it in ways that they and their machines can use. Finally, the Library of Congress Labs has some good principles to help us and guide us along the way. They say that library collections are incredibly diverse and are particular challenge for current machine learning and AI tools to process predictably. New AI tools with impressive claims are being released rapidly every day. We benefit from testing these tools openly, collaborating and learning from others. AI-specific quality standards and policies that support our context, providing authoritative resources to the public over the long term, need to be developed and communicated to partners and vendors. While large-scale implementation of responsible AI in the labs is still several years away, now is the time to increase experimentation and collaboration both within our organisation and across the sector. That's from Library Compass. Thank you.
Thank you to both Ines and Peter for fascinating presentations, and I think that's demonstrated the power of a data set. We are out of time, so unfortunately we won't have time for questions at this session, but Ines and Peter will be with us for the rest of today, so please do come and talk to them and share anything that you might need to do. The next parallel sessions are now taking place, so if you are NHS Lanarkshire, please stay here. Otherwise, if you go on to your next sessions, and many thank you, and can I thank our wonderful speakers again, Peter and Ines.